Okay, so this week's Torah portion is Metzora. Metzora. The portion is Leviticus 14 and 1 through 15 and 33. Leviticus 14 and 1 all the way up to 15 and 33. Metzora, which is dealing with the plague of leprosy. Leprosy, we find out, is a scourge. It's a scourge. We talked about this on Wednesday at our midweek Torah study. If you was there or not there, we can recap right now a little bit. Metzora, as a Torah portion, deals with the cleansing process of the leper. In the previous portion, we saw what was considered a leper, what the classifications were for if you were a leper, and what said if you was clean or if you were unclean. And so in this portion, it talks about the process which a person who was considered a leper had to go through in order to be pronounced clean. And so, that's kind of the main portion here of what this portion consists of. I wanted to look at the end, which is Leviticus 15. I wanted to read Leviticus 15. Hold on, let me see exactly where I wanted to start here. Leviticus 15. I want to look at the final 4 verses. Leviticus 15, 30 through 34.
15? It goes to 33. This one much.
Oh, I don't know why I said 34. I'm literally looking at 33.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I said 30.
That's fine. But,
because it's 4 verses.
But you want 30 to 33.
Correct.
All right. Leviticus,
There's no such thing as Leviticus 15 and 34.
Leviticus 15, verse 30. And the priest shall prepare the one as a sin offering and the other as an ascending offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before Yahweh for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanliness when they defile my dwelling place, which is in their midst. This is the Torah for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is sick in her monthly separation, and for one who has discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with an unclean woman.
Okay, very good. So, again, the portion, a large portion of it deals with the idea of the cleansing of the leper, but also it talks about these various discharges, whether they be normal, regular things that happen or abnormal things that happen, and the necessity to deal with those various uncleannesses properly. And so the thing that I wanted to kind of concentrate on quickly here, when we think about this verse 31, where it is speaking to the children of Israel and how they are to deal with their uncleanness. Important part here, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my dwelling place. And so it's interesting to, when we think about, Israel as a nation and how it was set up, when you think about the idea of the tabernacle and the place where the Most High dwelt, his dwelling place that was in the midst of the people. And when you think about kind of, what that represents, really, Israel, of course, is the nation, but when we think about what becomes the renewed covenant, which is also dealing with a nation, but it's also dealing with people as individuals, where their makeup really is exemplified through what we see with Israel, the nation, in terms of individual being, belonging to the Most High being one's Elohim, and literally dwelling in the midst of that individual. Just like how he dwelt in the midst of the nation, he dwells in the midst of each one of his people that make up the nation. And so when we think about these commands where it talks about the idea of maintaining these holiness, and you think about the idea of from an old covenant standpoint, when they became unclean, they would have to go away, have to separate themselves so that they wouldn't defile the most holy place. And that being something that kind of typified what we see in the new covenant, but it must be different. Because when you think about the Most High dwelling on the inside of you, when you talk about these things that, were both, normal, regular kind of separations that were, that happened, or if they were, abnormal, from a right now standpoint, you don't think about the idea of, like, say, the spirit of the Most High leaving you during these times. Even though it seems like sometimes people may maybe act as if that's something that does happen. But the principle, I think, that's necessary for us to be able to understand is, though, the idea of maintaining a particular thought process of, you can't be in a perpetual state of cleanness, but the idea here was that you were to deal with certain things the way that it was prescribed for you to do so. And when we think about verse 31, where death was something that would come if you were to try to approach the Most High when you weren't in a particular way. I'm not sure if actually was one able really to defile the most holy place? You know, people acted in a way that was, classified as defiling acts, but they died.
They died in the process of trying to defile.
Well, I don't know if they were trying to do it, but they were doing something that was a defiling act, and they literally died in the place. But I don't know if the place didn't become unclean though.
Because otherwise, if Nadab and Abihu died in that place and the place became unclean, then they would have to rededicate it for another 8 days afterwards. So, them
Yeah.
dying is to cleanse the situation. Judgment.
Although, when we look at what the priest does at the Day of Atonement, which is actually coming up here, isn't it? He actually cleanses the most holy place. And if something isn't dirty, it don't need to be cleansed. If it ain't broke, then don't fix it. So how's the thing getting cleansed if it's kind of undefilable? Interesting thought there.
No, my thought is that
Yes,
the
I know what your thought is, but
unholy can't be made.
when you think about what is being done there, is an interesting thing to add to that thought, because of the fact that everything that has to do with the tabernacle on the Day of Atonement is essentially cleansed
Yes.
by a sacrifice. What's that comment?
It says, true, we don't believe that the Ruach Elohim leaves the unclean. Being holy / unholy is different from being clean / unclean. You can be holy and be in an unclean state. She said purification rituals versus spiritual state.
Yes, those two things aren't, in fact, synonymous. However, they are things that kind of, one kind of exemplifies the other. And he's showing us these things in such a meticulous way but the thing that he wants for us to be able to understand is, in fact, the idea of holiness, though. And he's teaching us holiness through the idea of cleanliness. And, again, treating cleanliness in a way that is prescribed. And so an interesting thing that we learned, I learned it, somebody else might know it already. It's an interesting thing that I learned, and we spoke about on Wednesday, was when you think about when you look at Leviticus chapter 14, and it begins to speak about the leper. It calls him a leper. And he calls him a leper at the beginning of his process of being cleansed. And it doesn't call him a leper anymore. He's always from thenceforth referred to as the one who is to be cleansed. And so it's interesting also when we look at that fact, that it helps us to understand that the thing that the Most High seeks to do for his people is to actually transform his people and actually change the status of his people in a way that is irrevocable. I said it. I said irrevocable.
You mean, what is it, once saved?
Wow. I didn't say all that. But I might have said it. I could have said it. But the point is that the thing that the Most High seeks to do in us, to do for us, is a complete thing. And he causes for us to be made new. And he shows us through this cleansing, which is kind of a miraculous cleansing, by the way, that the thing that he shows us through this cleansing is a literal status change. And so it's interesting when we look at this, actually, the Torah portion, and what we'll also see in the New Testament portion is that when we think about these processes that the Most High has for us to go through, when we align ourselves with the instructions that the Most High has given us, it literally changes us completely. Because even here, when you think about these things, you know, there's a faith situation involved. Even though it's this thing that you're doing is specific instructions, and you're doing these specific things, but the things that the Most High is calling for His people to be doing is slightly peculiar. Peculiar, that's a good word, peculiar. And I think that there's a faith situation that is also involved. And so I want us to kind of think about that, the cleansing process, the status change, the faith that's involved in it. You know, keep that in mind when we go and look over at what we see in today's New Testament portion. All right, so does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or comments about leprosy? Liquid emissions, or cleansing thereof. Okay, very good. So we have all of the chapters written out. I mean, in the description, we have links to previous videos made of each chapter of the Torah that can be referenced if need be.